The Hustle.
Welcome to The Hustle with me, Roger Sanchez. It's our regular series where we sit down with some of the most interesting and influential people in music, media, sport, and culture and talk about the business side of life. Now, my guest for this episode is an absolute giant in the electronic music world. And he's also a household name. I'm pretty sure most of you who are listening will know who he is. Now, he's behind several dance tracks like Praise You, Rockefeller Skank, Weapon of Choice, and one of my favorites, Right Here, Right Now, and so many more. Now, he's produced some of the most famous remixes of all time, has shelves full of awards. I'm pretty sure he's got some of them behind him right now. You know, Grammys, Brits, Ivor Novellos, just to name a few. And he sold quite a lot of records. So I am very honored to have with me on The Hustle today, the Fatboy Slim himself, the one and only Norman Cook. Thanks for joining us, Norman.
Thank you very much, Roger. You're a very gracious introduction. I can only disappoint after that big build-up.
No, you can never disappoint. As a matter of fact, it's one of the best things about you is that you're always full of surprises, none of which disappoint.
Really?
So, none of them disappoint.
You know what? And to be honest, because I've been quite reflective recently, and not all of them have been good, the surprises, but you never get to hear the bad ones. I think there's an old adage in my family, which is you can't make an omelette without breaking a few eggs.
Let me tell you, even if you get some of the shells in that egg omelet, it's still kind of tasty.
Yeah. Some of them had it. Yeah, some of them were a little crunchy. No, but I mean, no, some of them just disappear without trace. Something. So because it's weird. Every now and then you remind of something you do, and you're like, oh God, yeah, I spent all that time doing it, and it just didn't work. But like you said, it's better to surprise and disappoint than just to smooth along in the middle.
You know, I think one of the best things is always being very much yourself and being 100% honest. And you know what? Whether you succeed or fail at whatever it is you're trying to do or whatever it is you're doing, it comes from an honest place. And it's one of the things I've always appreciated about you, because every single time I've seen you and we've actually caught up. As a matter of fact, I think the first time we met in person was on a private jet for a New Year's Eve gig back in the 90s. Oh, do you remember that? That was the first time I actually met you. Do you remember that one?
Was that the Christ? Yeah, I mean, I don't remember when it was. I don't remember going.
It was in the 90s, and it was New Year's Eve, and obviously you had like huge records at the time. I think you were still, I think Zoe Ball was with you on the jet with us that day. And I remember I used to have it recorded. Like I had a video of it and some pictures of somebody stole my laptop, broke into a house years ago in Ibiza. So I lost it all. So I'm kind of pissed off about that.
That was it. No, because I think Oki was on that flight.
Oki was on that flight too. That's right. And
I'll be honest. You remember I was partying quite a lot in those days. So I'm more reminded by the photos. Yeah, Zoe was there. But yeah, it was quite an interesting New Year's Eve, as I remember.
It was a hell of a lot of fun. I got to tell you something. I mean, that was probably one of the first times I'd actually flown on a private jet. It wasn't very big. I remember going a bit. If anything, I was more disappointed with the size of the jet and kind of having to stuff in.
I'm not even sure if it was a jet, Roger. I think
it might have been a propeller. I think it was a propeller. Oh dear, how posh are we? We're all complaining about bloody propellers and jets. No.
Listen, like I said, in those days, we didn't complain about getting flown to gigs. It was quite a novelty in those days. It was very exciting.
Especially driving up and down the M1.
Brixton.
Yes.
We'd already done Brixton Academy really early.
Yes.
And then we
flew to London, I think. I think we flew to London. Because I remember it was a big arena. Before the O2 was built, there was a big arena. And I just remember us kind of going down a hallway. I had a huge kind of like leather camo bloody sheepskin at that time. It was freaking cold in the UK. It was New Year's Eve. But I just remember, sitting on the plane and just kind of talking to you and just thinking, he's really, really cool. He's just a really normal person. And it's one of the things that's always come across about you. You're a real person. You know, every time I see you playing without your shoes on, so I know you like to get comfortable, you know, so I love that about you.
Well, I think we always got on because I think we come from, we sing from the same hymn sheet. I mean, because I was, you see, I was really scared of meeting you because I held you in awe and I was like, oh my God. And I was amazed you were even talking to me, let alone that you were like friendly. And
mate,
the thing is, I think we do this because we love the music predominantly,
yes.
and we also love the effect it has on people and on ourselves when we listen to it together. But yeah, I mean, we definitely hit it off because we had the same kind of just love of what we do.
You know, it's one of the interesting things. Both you and I started music really early on in life. I think you started like when you were about 18, and you had DJ Quintox was your actual proper DJ started a career. Listen, I had a cheesy name. I think I was called DJ Latino when I first started off in my career. So don't beat yourself up about that. And I know, you know, I'm not going to go down the whole like rabbit hole of all of your Marvel Comics story, but I kind of I like to call it the Marvel Comics origin story. So I know you started playing in Brighton, one of the places I live in the UK. And you connected with your fellow bass player. He was a bassist for the band The House Martins, Paul Heaton was his name, right?
Yeah.
And I remember the House Martin stuff and like kind of your early Beats International. I used to love that Be Good to Me track. And I just remember that at that point, I was like, yo, who is this? And I'm in America getting all of what I call the imports from the UK. And I'm like, who is this Norman Cook guy? Because he actually, I'm a big sample head. Like I used to go, Kenny Dope and I used to go to go record shopping at these different record fairs and just kind of hunt through vinyl. And I know that you're just like that. So it's an interesting one to kind of know that you come from that real music loving place.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, the weird thing was I was remembering the story and explained to my son the other day of how I became a DJ, because I always wanted to be a musician. And but I was a dancer.
I used to be a dancer. Well, that's where I started off.
I see. I wanted to be a musician ever since I was a kid. I just wanted to be, you know. And then when punk rock came out, I was about 14 when punk rock came out, and that really freed everything up. It's like, look, you don't have to know your instrument that well. You just pick up a guitar, you know, roughly learn how to play it. So I was sort of excited about that. But then when I came down to Brighton to go to college, and I'd failed my A-levels because I was in a band with Paul. And so when I went to college, I said to myself, look, if you're going to stick 3 years at college, you can't be in a band because you'll just, it's not going to work. So I took up my second love, which was DJing. So I DJed in clubs all the way through college. And, but at that point, I just loved black music. And in those days, it was more like it was black music made by black people, not so much by white people, unless you were like Simply Red, you know?
Yeah.
And, so I was in a band where where me and Paul both loved black music, but we felt that our legacy as suburban white gawky kids was to play kind of indie pop. But and also at the same time, in those days, DJing was more of a hobby rather than a profession. It just didn't pay well enough to make a living out of it.
I remember those college lugging around milk crates that you used to lug around the milk, like the bloody milk crates we stole from the local grocers.
Wooden beer crates full of records, yeah.
And it didn't pay the pay. It wasn't about the pay at that point in time. It was really about kind of the buzz.
Yeah.
You know, I remember when I was playing in college, I came from the beginning of breaks and funk and hip hop, then disco, which much later on down the road morphed into house music. But back then it was really about playing and getting the vibe off of the crowd. So here's a question then. If it wasn't paying very, very well at the time, did you know that at that point in time when you were DJing that you wanted it to become like a proper job, or did it feel like this is just we're gonna have a laugh for right now?
Well, no, because it never really was a proper job. I mean, even like the top DJs in those days still had another job that paid the rent. So I don't know. But it was just a hobby. I mean, I started DJing because I had all the records. I was a fanatical record collector. So people used to invite me to parties just because I was the one who had the records. And
that's the best thing about having all the good records.
Yeah. And so I always enjoyed playing music to other people, but I felt in life what I wanted to do was make my own music.
Yes.
And so for years I made music in bands, and I had Freak Power and Beats International, and but all the while DJing was my kind of second love, but it went from a hobby. So somewhere along the line, and I know exactly when it was. I was in a band called Freak Power, and we were a proper traditional band, like a funk band, and we were traveling around in a beaten up old van doing gigs and never making any money.
So rock and roll, I love it.
And at the same time, while I was touring around Europe, busting my balls, I was releasing records as the Mighty Dubcats and an early Fatboy Slim. And then all of a sudden, more people wanted to come and see me DJ than wanted to hear me come and play guitar. And that was a big moment in my life. And I was like...
That was around the 90s, right?
Sorry?
That was around the 90s, wasn't it?
That would have been, mid-90s.
Mid-90s.
So I'd still kept up DJing, and I was making these sort of funny little kind of sample dance records. But I was playing, I felt my role was made as a musician and a producer. But I realized that people wanted the other stuff. They wanted the DJing stuff. And it was, I think, that's one of the reasons I think I've been so lucky in my career is by that point, I'd been a DJ for 10, 15 years. So I knew I had the chops a bit. And when all of a sudden everyone wanted DJs, I had those chops. But also because I'd been making pop records in pop bands, I kind of had a pop sensibility, and I knew a little bit more about how to, make it work as pop music. And around by the time I was Fatboy Slim, that had kind of all come together. But I realized then that I'm a better DJ than I'm a bass player or a guitar or a songwriter. And I was just more happy doing that. And since then, until 3 months ago, in my head, it was like, you know what, I'm quite happy just being a DJ. I do less and less producing, less and less actually putting records out. And I really love the idea of it kind of like you're a wandering troubadour.
Yes.
Minstrels. Like back in the Middle Ages, there would be these people who they told the stories in song, and they would travel from city to city, picking up stories and taking one story from one city to another. And it feels like that when you're a DJ. It feels like you're just traveling around, having this conversation with people.
You ever watch the series on Netflix called The Witcher?
No.
Okay, you got to see it because there's a traveling troubadour minstrel that goes along with the main character. It's kind of like the goofy guy, but he's always making up songs, and that kind of does remind me of exactly what you're talking about right now.
Well, that was how, pre the internet, that's how information got from city to city. They would hear a song about, so-and-so and what the exploits that they got up to. And I think we're DJs are like a modern day version of that. We sort of travel around and but it's, we transmit all this information from town to town. Sadly, we also transmit viruses, which is why we're all staying at home.
Bloody hell. Listen, you know what's interesting? Thinking about the kind of origins of where we started, the technology to make records back in the 90s, when the explosion of DJing really hit it off, and when you really kind of got into it as Fatboy Slim with samplers. And I think the DJing side of things really leads to the production side of things, because not only do you have the pop sensibility, but you have the dance floor headspace. The technology to make records back then was very, very different. I used to have like SB1200, S950, so on and so forth. What did you used to use back then, and how does that compare to if you want to make a track now? Like, how do you find the difference in the technology from then to now? And how does that season the flavor of what you're doing?
I think that is one of the reasons I don't make records anymore. Is I used to love my main weapon of choice was two S950s.
Mm-hmm.
Had enough memory in them. Two S950s, a 909, a 303, and a MIDI Moog. It was like a mini Moog, but it had a memory on it. And that was pretty much all that made everything. And every now and then you'd buy a new bit of kit, you'd buy a new drum machine or something, and then you just find out how to use it and abuse it and what noise does that make. And it was kind of, we felt like we were sort of on the wild frontier of music, because learning how to make music by chopping up other people's records and stuff like that, which I found really exciting. And I really loved that abuse of instruments. Now, when I go to make a record now, I open the laptop and I've got this workstation which has got every single drum machine in the world, every single synth. I've got access to every single sample, and I can, and it's
information overload.
So you don't know where to start. But also it's like shooting fish in a barrel. There's you just feel like, well, I could do anything, and I end up doing nothing.
Well, the discovery aspect of using, and I've always said this, the discovery aspect of using a limited amount of tech forces you to think as creatively as possible to squeeze every single juice and squib and squeak out of the box you can.
The best example of that is the 303.
Yeah.
The 303, which was the cheapest instrument. It was rubbish at its original job. And so it's in second hand in every junk shop. And then some fine gentleman worked out that if you abuse it, it makes the most sexy noises, which have become part of the tapestry of dance music ever since. And and that was just down to one failed musical instrument and people, distorting it and abusing it.
Listen, one man's failure is another man's hit. So why don't you do this? This is something I've started to do recently. Like, I'm the same as you, where I've got a laptop, I've got so many samples, so on and so forth. Especially now with quarantine. I was building a studio here in Miami. I had to stop everything. I literally dragged my vinyl decks, my 1200s, my CDJs and everything, and I've got where I'm recording right now, little mini setup. I'm doing my graffiti. You can probably see the pieces I'm working on behind me. So it's kind of like, getting back to the roots of it. And I started pulling out old samplers and my SP1200 and stuff like that. How about trying that just for kind of like laughs and without any expectation? Because the problem is, I think we put a lot of expectation on ourselves to actually make something.
What you're probably saying is kind of maybe...
Exactly. That's
it's sitting there.
That's it. Yeah, you know what? I could probably send you some discs or samples that I still have for the S950 and the SP1200 in case you lost all of yours.
Well, no, again, I've got all mine here. Don't worry. I've got my whole sample. Yeah, no, what I've been doing is kind of getting the 950 and then loading up all those little floppy disks and putting them into my sort of palette in Ableton. But I end up using them more just for my DJing, just for re-edit, for DJing.
I find that the re-edits helps me get back into a creative state of production, of creating.
So over the years, have you suffered from a kind of writer's block sort of? Yeah.
And it went really, really bad, like the whole explosion of the whole EDM thing, when everyone was just kind of really regurgitating the same breaks, the same sound, same bloody everything. I kind of reached a place where I didn't know where to go. It forced me to rethink why I do what I do. And that's why I love hearing the fact that you and I both come from the same place of we love music and we love the origins of where we started from. Cyclically, it's come back to where we started from now in a very curious way. Even the quarantine has affected that. People really want to hear not just older stuff, but that vibe. So it's kind of like the business side of it weighed so heavily on me for quite a while that I just would like do the same thing where I'd open up my laptop and I wouldn't even know where to start. What I found out was that I had to reset my entire mindset in terms of from the business all the way to it and how it affects me in the studio. I want the firing managers, changing things around. What are you doing from your business perspective? And how was it before your early setup compared to how you have it now? Is it something that what
now as in post EDM or now as post COVID-19?
I think in the last few years, how have you been operating? I mean, the COVID-19 is definitely changing things.
I think I had a similar thing with you where EDM just made me question whether I wanted to make records that sounded like that, and whether it was relevant for me to. And I sort of tied it, because originally EDM sort of kind of followed on a little bit to where I'd been going, but I just listened to it, and all of a sudden it's like, I don't like this. I don't want to keep up with this trend anymore. I want to just stay where I am. But I think, I don't know, in America, in Europe, we quite quickly split up between EDM and kind of real music, and it was quite easy for me to make that decision that I would go back to the underground side of it. Because all through my career, I've kind of been very heartened by the fact that even when I have pop records and pop hits, I'm always kind of allowed back into the fold by people like yourself. You know,
well, it's not that you're allowed back into the fold. You're part of it. You know, you're part of the tapestry.
I don't feel like.
But I know what you mean. But I know what you mean.
Burn my bridges. You know, it's like when you have.
Listen, mate. When I had another chance, every single DJ in the underground was like, "Oh, you sold out. What happened?" I'm like, I just made a track. It just felt good, you know. And one of the things I learned, most importantly, which I've seen from you, is even when that doubt comes through, there comes a point where you just go, sod it all. I'm going to be me. If this feels good, I just got to go with it. Because what happens is when you get caught in that trap of trying to be too cool, and then if you do have the pop sensibility, if you do want to write something that's beyond the narrow confines of a particular subgenre, you feel like you hit a wall, or like, I'm not going to be allowed back into the fold. You didn't sell out because you did you. And
also, I sold out. I mean, I was in a cheesy white indie pop band.
But you started there.
So I started by selling out, and I've got cooler, I think, since. No, I
agree.
It was good. I mean, what I did, like you said about that moment of self-doubt, when I open the laptop, I have extreme self-doubt. And as a result, nothing happens. But if I've got a gig booked, sometimes in the hotel before, I'll have extreme self-doubt. I'll walk into the room and just think, oh my God, they're really young and cool. And, what the fuck am I going to play tonight? But because you can't have the self-doubt, if you're booked to play, you got to play.
Yeah.
And then within 3 minutes of me starting to play, I'm like, hold on, I remember this. I get this. They get it. This is what we do. This is what I do. I'm a performer, and it's nice producing records and making records, but I get such an extreme joy out of playing my favorite records to people. Not necessarily my records, just playing my favorite records to other people and watching them dig them, watching them having a great night out, watching them fall in love, watching them get off their faces. You know, I just love being in the middle of that, and that's what kept me going when that got me out of my doubts. And around the same time I got sober as well, because that was really scary. That really made me think, what exactly are you doing? You're standing there playing records to some drunk people, and you're waving your arms around in the air, and they're shouting, they're getting overexcited.
That's when you had there's two phases. There's the kind of superhero phase, like you think you run everything, and then there's no, you're not. You're an asshole behind decks playing records. What are you doing? And the interesting thing is, what we really are is somewhere in between. And as long as you remember who you are, the fact of why you do it and why you love it, that's, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, that's probably where you kind of have come to baseline, where it's like, this is who I am. I'm comfortable being me. And it's kind of a weird way of going through that cycle, isn't it? Like you kind of go through start off super hungry, things explode, you're on top of the world, and then all of a sudden everything starts getting really weird, especially depending on who you have around you.
Yeah. I mean, when you're young, my son's 19 and he wants to start a record label. He wants to make records. He wants to do this. He wants to be an actor. He believes he can do all these things. And I think as you get older, the knocks that life gives you takes out that confidence of I can do anything. And so you kind of, you end up just doing things you know you can do rather than taking on new things. Yeah, when I was younger, I think you feel like a superhero. It's like, I can do anything. I'll start a clothing brand. I'm really happy where I am in my career right now, in that I know that I love DJing so much that's I'm quite happy if I never make another record again. Now, I'm not saying that's what I intend to do or that's how it work out, but if that's the bottom line,
yeah,
if I never feel like making records again, I don't have to.
Yeah.
And I mean, you know, we've been around the block a few times. We know that very few people give up. You know, Danny Tanaki tried it. He tried it and he realized how difficult it is. You know,
hey, he lives upstairs. You know that, right? We live in the same building.
Well, I was thinking you were close. I didn't think you were that close.
Yeah, we were close.
Send my love, by the way.
Literally neighbors. No, I will do. You know what's
he's the only DJ. He's the only DJ from our generation I know that has ever tried to seriously to give up, and I couldn't do it. It was destroying him. It's just like, what else would we do?
It reminds me of as well. What's his name? Danny Rampling. Who I love Danny, and he's also has another passion, which is food, so cooking. And he just said, like, I'm hanging up my decks. I'm gonna be a restaurateur. And then a few years in, he's like, I'm seeing him popping up, and I'm seeing him pop up in the beat and this. And I'm like, Danny, what are you doing? He's like, I'm just doing the odd gig here and there. I'm like, nah. You know what? Always indulge your passions, because I believe creativity sparks from there, but never forget the kind of root. And this is why I never say I'm going to retire. I always say I'm going to keep on doing it until people kind of don't want to hear from me anymore. You know what I mean? What
I've always said is that I said when if I stop enjoying it, or if they stop enjoying it, then I'll stop.
Then it's time to stop.
I mean, if they stop enjoying it, I'll have to stop. But that's I can't see that happening. And you know, if you think like Frankie Knuckles was playing in a wheelchair right to the end.
I mean, he is a man who died with his boots on, for sure. You know, and God rest his soul. And another one who was my neighbor. This is what's funny. Frankie was my neighbor in Manhattan.
Is there some kind of sort of slightly aging DJs, you know, like community going on there in Miami?
I don't. Well, you know what's funny? It's interesting. So Armand,
can I join?
Yes, you can. You're very welcome. You've got all the right shirts for it. Armand's here, and Armand's a lot like you in that he's not overly concerned about making tracks. You know, it's kind of like he's like, I'm not feeling it right now, but he's quite comfortable with himself. I think this is a very important thing. I think being comfortable with yourself, but at the same time, you have an independent spirit that allows you to do stuff, whether it's creating music, releasing music, DJing, that allows you to express yourself. Now, I was going to ask you about this because part of when you were talking about how you were able to have these huge records, but still be in the underground, part of that's linked to the fact that you've got a couple of labels. I mean, is that, I know I've got a couple of labels too, so I'm curious to hear why you have labels. Did you want to do it as like a business decision, or probably more like I get to put out what I want and get to control my own releases and destiny with that?
I'll tell you I've only got one label, Southern Fried. Skint was just really good friends of mine, and we worked together. I never actually ran or owned the label. But Southern Fried, we started because if there was records that I made that weren't Freak Power records, and at that point I was Pizza Man. And if Loaded Records didn't like a tune and they said it's too crazy to be a Pizza Man record, rather than give up on it, me and my manager decided we'd put it out as this fictitious band called the Mighty Dubcats. So that it was just an outlet for the crazy ideas that nobody else would release.
I love it.
That was the only reason I started. I never really wanted to get into the business of running a label, and I've never been particularly hands-on in running it. I would just A&R. Do you know Nathan Detroit?
Yeah, I've kind of bumped into him a couple of times.
Bumped into him a lot over the years. Yeah. He ran Southern Fried for years, and he would just like once every fortnight we'd sit there for an hour, and he'd play me some tunes, and I'd play him some tunes on an A&R front. But I've never got into the wanted to get into the business of running a label.
Yeah.
But it just became an outlet. If there was a tune that I was, playing that somebody had sent me and I thought it was really good and no one was picking it up on it, we'd put it out. And that was my only real motivation, was to put out the stupid records that no one else wants.
Probably
prove that they were
good records. Look, like the Mighty Dubcats, Just Another Groove is probably one of my favorite disco flavored tracks that I still drop. And that just, when I get tracks like that through, and I also get a chance. That's pretty much the reason why I started. I've got 2 labels, which is Stealth and Under the Radar, just because it's sonically different. It's kind of a similar type of thing. But just for that, just like, I want to put out this record. I don't want to worry about, does it fit into this? Does it fit into that? I could just go with it. Whether it's, sales or not, it doesn't matter. The reaction on the floor, that to me is my particular measuring stick of whether the track is good.
Yeah, but also there's just the excitement of the excitement of just pressing vinyl. I mean, when we started Southern Front, basically, we would do a pressing of 1,000 vinyl. And if we could sell 1,000, that would be fine. We'd got our money back. Everybody's happy. We'd had a record out. Now, some records would only sell that 1,000. Basically, the only criteria was like, do we reckon we can shift 1,000 of this?
Yeah.
And some of them I thought maybe not, but everything I thought, well, it's worth a punt. And then some of them you would then go on and license. With the Mighty Dubcats, we ended up licensing to other labels around the world, because we didn't. Although at that point we didn't even have an employee. The early Dubcats records, we just made them ourselves. I made the labels, and then
I remember the drawings too.
Yeah,
I love it.
Stick little bits out and do drawings, and then we just sell them to the vans that took them out. But I loved it. I loved and then I loved it when they would get across the channel and get into Europe, or when I remember going to the first time I saw a Southern Fried record in a shop in America. It's like I never realised that they'd got that far.
Yeah. That's a buzz.
Yeah, because that was again. There was a buzz about releasing records and physically having them and physically getting them to people. And if you got it to the right person, then they would, and which you don't get in this. Everything's very instant now. It's like you drop a tune,
downloads. Yeah,
drop a tune, it gets downloaded or not. You never really know if it has, but those days you put a tune out and for the next 4 months it would be like, oh, you're hearing it in different places, and some of them would do, and I love the thrill of that chase, but I don't get so much of a kick. I mean, last time I put out a record, I couldn't even get them to tell me what the release date was.
It's hard work.
I said, like, what's the release date? They went, well, it's already gone to Beatport, and then it's, and before the release date, everything, all the promos would go out, and everything would work up to, trying to get a big shift on the release date. But now it's like things don't get released; they just kind of peter, they kind of into the.
I think it has a lot to do with the fact that it's not physical, and I think that when you had this physical object, the piece of vinyl, that was the build up, the release and everything, because there was something to hold on to. I mean, it's not so much on vinyl nowadays, but do you find like you could do that with merch or other stuff, or is it kind of like you're not really into that at this point in time? Because that's the one thing, like before with vinyl, that thrill of having something physical to get out and building up to it. Don't have that as much now with music.
No, I mean, we're going to start sounding like grumpy old men now. That whole thing you said about physical, there's certain things that I can't teach my children about, physical, the concept of a B-side.
Yeah.
The concept of something being rare. On the internet, nothing is rare. Everybody's got it. And so there was an intrigue about it that I think you don't get. And the fact that like you said, you physically held it in your hand, you bought into that particular band or that DJ or whatever.
Yeah.
And now everything is available to everyone all the time. And so there isn't that kind of precious, you don't feel so involved in it.
Yeah,
you
invested
press the button and it's there wherever you want.
Do you think that creating something physical, that's why I asked about merch, because like now, like for instance, this is like a t-shirt that I pressed one of a graffiti piece. So now I'm starting to do little things that are extremely limited for the ultra fans. But I think that might be a way to get people to invest.
Well, that's probably the only way I could explain to my son what, you know, the concept of a rare record was like. Oh, it's like Supreme, you know, you have to pay shitloads for it.
Exactly.
Because it's limit. Yeah, I suppose limit for rare, limited is the best you could get.
But I think,
I mean, on the one hand, I think it's great the way that music now is so democratic. Everybody can make a record without. Before, you'd have to spend a lot of money and time getting some kind of home setup together, even to get a pair of 1200s and a mixer. It was quite a big investment and everything. And I like the fact that now people can just mess about on GarageBand as soon as they've got a laptop. And I like the fact that everyone can have access to music. I mean, it's really helped. I think the biggest impact that the internet's had on DJ culture and club culture is, before then, nobody basically under 18 or 21 in America really heard the music that we were making. It was underground because it wasn't played on the radio.
It was only in the clubs.
You had to be an over 18 ne'er-do-well who stayed up late to hear it. And because of that, it was lovely and precious, and it was ours, but it wasn't making a huge amount of money. The reason EDM happened was because all of a sudden you can watch DJs and you can hear the music and you can access the music without going to a nightclub, which is great, and it exploded the world dance music, and it's great for all of us. The trickle down of it, even the most underground DJs will have or producers will have felt the benefits of the globalization of dance music. So I think the commercial EDM end is a necessary evil for the rest of us.
But I think what you're talking about, to me, is almost beyond the underground or the dance music scene. It's that involvement and that investment of a fan with their favorite band or artist or whatever have you. And part of that is investing in a piece of memorabilia, whether it's the vinyl that you're playing or whether it's a t-shirt or whether it's something that says, I belong to this tribe. There's always been a tribe of Norman. There's been a tribe of Roger Sanchez. There's been a tribe of Danny Tenaglia. There are tribes around the world. What's interesting? It's like we identify our tribes a lot of times by where we're from. And there's a huge Brighton, Fatboy Slim, Norman tribe, and you've done a lot to really connect with your tribe there. And I know that you've done like I heard you got involved with the Brighton Hove and Hove Albion Football Club. You really going into the roots. And I know you do the Big Beach Boutique in Brighton. And that to me is what I call the investment in the tribe. And that's something where you come from. Do you think that that's something that's missing maybe now because things are so globalized? And do you think that that's kind of a foundation of where you come from? Because for me, it's like New York. New York is my foundation, and that's where my tribe came from. Do you feel like that's coming from Brighton?
I don't see Brighton as my tribe. I see they're my community, right, or my family on a good day, and that's more my involvement in this city is it's more about being involved in the soccer team and charity stuff, and stuff in the community. And then, the big beach parties were a celebration of that rather than the part of it. I don't think I'd want to live in Brighton if that was where my tribe lived. They'd bother me in the street. I prefer to live my way.
From what I understand, it's kind of more like it. This is one thing about the UK that's a little bit different than the US. In the US, people are like real. Like if they see a star, it doesn't matter where you're at, they tend to be really fanatic. But in the UK, in certain towns, if it's like your hometown, you can walk to the pub.
Especially,
they'll be like, oh yeah, it's normal.
Yeah. Especially if you stay in your hometown and you've got their respect, they respect you enough. They just go, all right, Norm, just like they know you.
You're all right.
That's more my relationship. No, I think when I was thinking about who is my tribe, I was thinking my tribe is more the people who follow me or follow my lockdown mixtapes every week, and
those are amazing. By the way,
that's what's been keeping me sane, is doing these lockdown mixes where I kind of go on a little bit of a journey sometimes. Sometimes it's like the new stuff. Sometimes I wander off. But it gets my sort of DJ creative thing. But more so, I actually sit and read all the comments that everyone writes. And it you know, in the same way that you can plan a set in your bedroom or, you know, sitting on a plane or something. But when you get there and you get people's reactions, everything works a little bit differently. So I get my kicks just talking to people in New Zealand and Argentina. You know, some of them get really train spotty about the tunes I played, and some of them just, you know. But I think my tribe is more a worldwide tribe of people. Maybe few of them, maybe a bit too old to go to clubs nowadays, so they're kind of living vociferously through me.
What's interesting is I think that because of the pandemic, because of this lockdown, it's forced a lot of people to come to the medium and make sure that they're visible as your tribe. And I love the fact that you do the same thing I do. You like to read the comments, really connect with people. And I think that if nothing else, I think the pandemic right now has caused us to kind of pause and reflect a bit and kind of really get to a place where we have to go to what we love. You know, what have you found that's come out of it that's real positive?
Well, there's the thing that the kind of elephant in the room that no one is really talking about at the moment is that obviously we all realize that kind of what we do is going to be one of the last things to be put back in place.
Oh yeah.
We are the absolute opposite of social distancing. We are the most dangerous thing. So you know, I think we all realize that it could be years before really we're allowed to do what we used to do again. But within that time frame, there will be a lengthy time frame where you're okay to play to 200 people in a garden of a pub or the back room of a pub, or you know, a club that's a small club. But before we can get back to doing, you know, the big festivals and the arenas and stuff like that, we're going to get back to just playing in small clubs, which means which means that there's no point in paying superstar DJs to fly in private jets around the world just to play to 200 people. I think it's really going to go back to basics, back to our roots. When, you know, I don't know, in going, obviously by the time I'd heard of you and followed what you were doing, you were coming over to Europe and playing. But I mean, my first 10 years of DJing, I hardly ever DJed outside my hometown because you didn't get paid enough to pay the hotel to go and stay in London, you know. Well, London, I could just about do London. But I never played anywhere else in England because they had DJs there who were as good as me, and there was no point in paying me to go all the way over there. Now, over the 30 years since then, a lot has happened. But I think it's going to have to go back to basics where smaller crowds means you can't afford superstar DJs. So, and I'm kind of looking forward to that. I kind of like the idea of 6 months of just playing in Brighton and just playing a residency in Brighton again like I used to.
Do you know what's amazing is that, you know, it's the same, similarly, it was for me playing in Queens and in Manhattan was like, ooh, I went to London. So, but that small, I agree with you 100%. It's going to be a long time before we get back to anything that resembles what pre-COVID-19 was like. And I've spoken to a lot of people, and we all agree that what's happening now is kind of like a major reset. People that are in this for the love of music, like yourself, are the ones who are going to outlast and survive. There'll be new crop of people coming up during this time who maybe might be influenced by guys like us who love the music. But the people that are able to transcend this are the ones who do exactly like you're saying. It's great that people hear us and say, wow, Norman Cook, Fatboy Slim is down to play a 200-person pub, you know, and happy about it. And I think that's an important aspect of what we do is that love. That's real. You can't manufacture that. That's real love of music.
Yeah, I mean, I learned a very, very important lesson the other week. I did my first live stream. I like doing the mixtapes, but the idea of trying to just DJing in your kitchen and without an audience there, I didn't really fancy doing. But I filmed a blue screen thing in my lounge to be used in a virtual reality show that they did for the Shangri-La for Glastonbury. And when I was filming it, I was just standing there, literally in my kitchen with a big blue screen behind me, but there was about 7 people in the room, like, who were doing the lights and the technicians in that. And I said, it's Tuesday lunchtime. Can you give me a hand here, because I've got to try and make it look like that. I said, try and give me some kind of reaction back, And after about 10 minutes, we all started getting into it together, and there was 8 people in the room. One of them was me, and it was great. I loved it, and I realised that whether it's 7 or 7,000, I just need to play to
that vibe.
So and I just felt alive, after 6 weeks of just homeschooling my kids. I felt alive again, and I felt my heart beating again, and that the love and excitement for it all. So yeah, I mean, when my manager said, you're going to have to, probably end up playing in Brighton and small clubs for the next year, I'm like, yeah,
loving it. I love the one that I saw with your daughter playing with you. I thought that was amazing.
Oh, did you see that?
I did see that, and it's one of the things where I've got a daughter too. Bit of a different situation with me. But one thing that I think is important is sharing the love of music with your kids, regardless of what direction they pick. Because I try not to tell any of my kids what to do. But I am happy to be able to kind of share some of that musical DNA. Is that something that's important to you too? Kind of pass that on to your daughter or your son, and see them kind of vibing with it. Or at the very least, you've given them a bit of an idea of where that love came from, why Dad is who he is.
Yeah. Well, I definitely went the path of not encouraging them to do anything apart from that podcast it was just weird.
That was so much fun.
That was she wanted to go to Camp Festival, and that was going to be her first festival, and she was so disappointed that it might not happen. So that was kind of her treat for not doing it. But I'm not the pushy dad who said to both his kids, I said to him, you don't want to do what your dad does, do it. And my son, even when I asked him what he wanted to do, and he said, well, I can't do DJing because you killed that. I can't
ruin that for me, Dad. Thanks.
I can't do radio or TV because Mum's ruined that. He said, so I'm going to have to.
Oh, that's awesome. Nothing like a pair of rock star mother and dad to kind of go, yeah, I'm going to become a lawyer. I'll be a baker.
Yeah. But my daughter, my daughter Jenny, I mean, she genuinely asked if I could show her how to DJ. And she's got a little touch for it. She didn't do half the tricks because obviously we're doing it she got a bit freaked out. I think she was more interested in sort of doing her TikTok moves for the cameras rather than getting deep into it. But when she gets really into a mix, she really loves just chopping it about. And she's a much better, more technical DJ than me.
I think the best thing is letting them find their way. It's funny. It's like I speak to Simon Dunmore a lot from Defected, and his kids just grew up in it and they fell in love with it. And the thing is, he told me same thing. I think when you've done this, especially when, I don't know what your parents were like, but my dad is an engineer. Mom was going to church, and I was like, yeah, I'm going to become a DJ. And in the beginning, that was kind of like big question marks on it. My dad actually said, you know what, you need to follow your heart and do what you want to do. That's the thing that I take away. Don't push your kids to do what you do, but give them the space to find it if that's what they want to do.
With my parents, who worked the other way around, I said I wanted to make pop music, and they said that's rubbish, you'll never do it. And I think my dad sort of one stage up from being a prostitute, I think, in the music business. And so all they did was tell me I shouldn't do it, I couldn't do it, I wouldn't do it.
Made you want to do it even more.
That's the reason I did it, was just to prove them wrong. So I think there's two ways to skin a cat. You can either, with my kids, I just really ambivalent. I've not pushed them into it. I've not said you can't do it. But like you said, both my kids have just grown up, physically grown up with all this around them, and with their mum as well. It's just showbiz is all around them. But more specifically, they've been to Ibiza every year of their lives. And the highlight of my daughter's year is coming in the booth at Mambo with me.
I love it.
She spends the whole evening. When she was really young, she wanted to come down and see what Daddy did. and we figured Mambo was the safest place.
Yes.
And when we got to Mambo, it was absolutely rammed everywhere. So the only safe place for her was in the booth with me. And she loved it, and no one seemed to, bat an eyelid. So every year, her and her mates come in the booth and she.
Do you know how many kids I've seen grow up in that booth in Mambo from all these years? And what's crazy is I've seen them when they were kids, like proper 5-10-year-olders, and some of them are like 25, 26 years old, DJing themselves. And I just think it's you just absorb the molecules of music in the air into your body. And I think if you allow your kids to do that, let them choose their way, give them the option. I think that's the best way forward, mate.
Yeah, and they've seen. I mean, they must see other people's parents who get up and go to work every day and probably don't enjoy their jobs, and then they've just seen the enjoyment that I get, and then the enjoyment that I give to other people, and it's unless they really kind of, like you said, just reacted and I want to go and be a librarian just to fuck you off.
But the thing is, it wouldn't fuck you off. You'd be like, "Oh, cool,
yeah, cool."
Tell me with the library. I know where to get my books now. You've had an amazing long career, mate, and like I don't see any signs of you slowing down. So I love it. But
I've slowed down a bit.
Well, when I say slowing down, I mean like saying this is not what I love anymore, and I've just kind of been jaded by the whole thing. Because, like you said, I think the exciting thing is going down to bringing it right back down to the pegs and taking it down to 200 people sweating in front of you with a mask on now, obviously. And please don't spit my way. But that energy is what drives you. You've had, like I said, a very long career. What, if any, moments stand out for you as like really career defining that you could look back and tell your kids, you know what? I remember this, and have that be something that really feels defining for you?
I think the parties we did on Brighton Beach, that to do that in your hometown and that's the largest crowd I've ever seen, for a DJ. And just to feel that was my kind of, coming back to your Marvel kind of continuing Marvel, that was my sort of epiphany of when I realized I was a superhero.
I got to tell you, there's nothing like hometown love, man. Where no matter where I've played around the world, playing in New York, my hometown, getting love locally, feels like nothing else in the world, right?
It's just the greatest pride ever. I think probably that, your family being proud of you, it's like a very extended version of that. And so I think that's probably the defining moment. So more recently, it was just I've got a cafe down the road in the local park where all the kids come.
Wicked!
And we do an annual block party there where we never announce it, but I always play in the back of an ice cream truck to the kids, and I
think I saw you post about this.
I might have done,
Did Dan come down? Was he everything with you on that one?
No, not on that. No, not on that one.
Which one?
No, we did. That was me and Dan. We did driving around. We did DJ carpool karaoke.
That's what it was. Yeah.
No. This is just. It's called the Big Beach Cafe, and me and my mate run it and own it. Well, he runs it, I own it, and it's once a year we just have a big. It's like a village fete.
Yeah.
Listen, I call it a block party, but obviously I live in. It's like a village fete, and there's a little dog best dog competition, and tombola stalls and whatever. And at the end of it, unannounced, I always get and play out of the ice cream van, and it's just for me, it's like that's everything about my career. It's to be able to
I love it.
DJ and DJing to all ages and kids.
An ice cream truck.
An ice cream truck, in the back of my own.
When they let Americans back into Europe again, because it's going to be a second for me, let me know, because I'm going to come and play a set back to back with you.
Yeah,
I'm in. We got a day for that. No, for sure. Well, I tell you what, right about now, what would you tell the Funk Soul Brother to use as his weapon of choice to make just another groove?
I'd say, ouch, 1 too many. Was that a serious question?
That was just me.
You wanted to get all those.
That's just me asking an actual serious question, but trying to use all the creative titles.
As in one record, if you're DJing.
What would you tell yourself? So let me translate that.
Oh, my previous self.
What would you tell yourself is the one most important thing to let you create, be it playing, be it making beats? What's the one most important ingredient in that special sauce for you?
I would just say, it sounds corny, but I'd say follow your heart, not your head.
I don't think that's
because your head will get caught up that people might not like it, or that it's rubbish, or your head might say, oh, it's not going to make me any money, or your head might say, follow your heart, and at least what you do will be, you won't care. If you're following your heart, you're brave enough to say, see if you like this, that's what I think I've got right. There's tons of things in my career I've got wrong, but I think that everything I've got right has been when I followed my heart rather than my head or my dick.
We've all followed enough of those, but I gotta tell you something. I agree 100%. Whenever you follow your heart, it's how you measure success, mate. To me, the measure of success is how happy am I with what I've done.
Yeah, but with me, also it just seems to go better if I try and be cynical and think, I'm going to do that, and because that would be clever, and then it never
goes to plan.
it just never works, basically. So it's normally when I do it, it's like I just get a gut feeling. It's like, I don't know why I want to do this, but I want to do it, and
this could end really badly, but I really want to do it, and it usually ends well.
If it's physically dangerous, I might not do it. But
well, I don't know about that. I've seen you do some physical.
You're right.
But you've done it all from the heart, man, and I love that. And listen, my man Norman Cook, praise you for your talent. Thank you for your time, and you've been good to me. That's all my cheesy titles that I'm going to throw at you. Listen, mate, thank you so much for taking this time.
If you want to give me another chance, then let's do this again sometime.
Absolutely, and I'll have you love dancing for long.
The Hustle.